Now that you're getting familiar with how to build websites, it's time to talk about the modern web design process. The modern web design process is where art, technology, and psychology meet, and it evolves over time as new trends emerge. In order to build a successful website, you need to begin at the beginning. By focusing on your company's purpose, the intent of your brand, and quality UX, you can build an appealing story to attract and maintain people's attention. The key to following a process that aligns with the overarching strategy of your business. Good web design offers more than just intriguing aesthetics. It helps people to understand the product, company, and branding through a variety of indicators. In order to do this effectively, we need to establish a defined goal. Great design is actually about having a website creation process that aligns with an overarching strategy. But how do we achieve that harmonious synthesis of elements? We can do this through a holistic web design process that takes both form and function into account. For me, the following steps are what's needed to build a website. First, I need to identify the goal. I need to find out what the goal of the website needs to fulfill. I need to know what its purpose is. Next is scope definition. Once we know the site's goals, we can define the scope of the project. These would be what pages and features the site requires to fulfill the goal and the timeline for building those things out. Then we'll create a sitemap and wireframes. With the scope well defined, we can start digging into the sitemap, defining how the content and the features we defined in the scope definition are going to play out. We'll also need to create wireframes so we have a general idea of where elements are going to go and what sort of technologies we'll need to use to fulfill that. Next, we'll have content creation. Now that we have a bigger picture of the site in mind, we can start creating the content for the individual pages. It's vital that we have real content to work with for this stage of development. This will blend into creating visual elements. With the site architecture and some content in place, we can start working on the visual brand. Depending on the client, this may already be well defined, but you might also be defining the visual style from the ground up. You can use things like mood boards and element collages to help with this process. Once we have the design fleshed out, then we will begin coding and developing the website. This is where we'll translate those visuals into a fully functioning interactive web experience. When the website is done and you've gotten all the pages defined and how they'll display to the visitor, it's time to make sure that everything works. We'll want to make sure that we test our website on a variety of browsers and devices so that we can ensure that the user experience is going to function no matter what sort of device. We'll also be looking for broken links and any other elements that might need to be touched up. Finally, when everything's working beautifully, it's time to execute your site launch. This is where you let the world see the website that you've spent all this time working on. This is where the user will have access to the website from their own personal device. Let's dive into some of these concepts a little bit more in detail. Goal identification and discovery is the initial stage. The designer needs to identify the end goal of the website design. Usually they work in close collaboration with the client or other stakeholders. Questions to explore and answer in this stage of the design and website development process include understanding the user's problem and defining the shared goals. Questions that may come up are, who is the target audience? Who is this website ultimately for? What should they expect to see when they arrive at the website? What's the primary purpose of the website? What message needs to be conveyed? What are the competitors doing, if there are any, and how should we differentiate ourselves? How will we measure these goals? It may be useful to write out one or more clearly identified goals, or create a one-paragraph summary of the expected aims. This will help put the design on the right path. Make sure you understand the website's target audience and develop a working knowledge of the competition. After carefully identifying and discovering goals, you must define the scope. This step is necessary. We need to open a dialogue on what's the most important features of the project. This will help us to establish a timeline. The timeline should show how long each step in the process will take. It is certain that the dates will ultimately shift as the process unfolds, but clear goals help set realistic, achievable deadlines. The scope definition phase is important. We usually visualize it with a chart or a spreadsheet. Seeing your milestones increases accountability. A site map provides the foundation for any well-designed website. It helps give web designers a clear idea of the website's information architecture and explains the relationships between the various pages and content elements. Building a site without a site map is like building a house without a blueprint, and that rarely turns out well. The next step is to find some design inspiration and build on to creating wireframes. Wireframes provide a framework for storing the site's visual design and content elements. They can also help identify potential challenges and gaps within the site map. Although a wireframe doesn't contain any final design elements, it does act as a guide for how the site will ultimately look. It can also act as inspiration for formatting of various elements. You can create wireframes using pen and paper, or you can use an application like Adobe XD, Illustrator, or even Figma. Once your website's framework is in place, you can start with the most important aspect of the site, the written content. Content serves two essential purposes. The first is that it drives engagement and action. The content will engage readers and drive them to take the actions necessary to fulfill a site's goals. This is affected by both the content itself, the writing, and how it's presented, the typography and structural elements. On the web, we generally want to use short, snappy, and intriguing content grabs to get the user to click through to other pages. Even if your pages need a lot of content, and often they do, properly chunking that content by breaking it up into shorter paragraphs supplemented by visuals can help keep a light, engaging feel. The second purpose that content provides is it will boost a site's visibility for search engines. The practice of creation and improving content to rank well in a search engine is known as search engine optimization, or SEO. Getting your keywords and key phrases right is essential for the success of any website. Content that's well written, informative, and keyword rich is more easily picked up by search engines, all of which helps the site be easier to find. Finally, it's time to create the visual style for the site. This part of the design process will often be shaped by existing branding elements, color choices, and logos as stipulated by the client. It's also the stage of the web design process where a good web designer can really shine. Images are taking on a more significant role in web design now than ever before. Not only do high-quality images give a website a professional look and feel, but they also communicate a message and are mobile-friendly and help build out trust. Visual content is known to increase clicks, engagement, and revenue. But more than that, people want to see images on a website. Not only do images make a page feel less cumbersome and easier to digest, but they also enhance the message in the text. You can even convey vital messages without people even needing to read. It is important to balance the right imagery with the right file size. You'll want to optimize your images and make them the right size so you don't slow down your website. There are ways in which you can compress images without losing quality. This will save on load times. You also want to make sure that your images are as responsive as your website. The visual design is a way to communicate and appeal to the site's users. Get it right, and it can determine the site's success. Get it wrong, and you're just another web address. Development involves the bulk of the programming work, as well as uploading content. You will need to stay organized and refer to the planning details as the full website takes shape. You'll be doing things like coding the development framework. You may make templates for each page. You'll develop and test features and interactivity. You'll fill all of the pages with actual content, both written and visual. Then you'll test and verify links and functionalities. After everything has been thoroughly tested and you're happy with the site, it's time to launch. Don't expect this to go perfectly. There may still be some elements that need fixing. Web design is a fluid and ongoing process that requires maintenance. Web design, and really design in general, is all about finding the right balance between form and function. You need to use the right fonts, colors, and design motifs. But the way in which people navigate and experience your website is just as important. Skilled designers should be well versed in this concept and able to create a website that walks the delicate tightrope between the two. This gives you an idea of most of the steps that you'll need to do in order to build out a website. It's important to understand the process as well as the way that we can implement and actually build the website. Even if you're not the one that's going to be doing all of these things, knowing what the process is will enable you to be better informed about how the website is going to roll out, and you'll be able to assist in a more effective manner.